The wind ripped through the bare trees, carrying a chill that felt too sharp for November. Inside the old farmhouse, the smell of roasted turkey clung to the air, thick and almost suffocating. Maggie sat at the head of the table, staring at the empty chair across from her. She hadn't seen her brother in years, not since that night he disappeared. Yet tonight, there was a strange certainty he would be there. A faint scratching sound echoed from the attic, soft at first, then deliberate, like nails tracing the walls. Maggie froze, clutching the silver knife she used to carve the turkey. Her mind tried to dismiss it, tried to laugh. But when the scratching grew louder, accompanied by a low, guttural whisper, she felt a sudden cold dread sink into her bones. Something was waiting upstairs, something that knew her name.
Maggie's hands trembled as she rose, the polished floorboards creaking under her weight. The old farmhouse smelled of decayed wood and burnt sugar from the pies left on the counter. She told herself it was just the wind, the old walls settling. But the scratching persisted, dragging a rhythm that felt too deliberate to be natural. As she reached the narrow staircase, she noticed a faint red smear on the wall, almost hidden in the dim light. Her pulse accelerated. She traced it with a finger. It felt sticky and warm, like fresh blood. Panic and disbelief tangled in her chest. How could blood appear here without anyone getting hurt? "Hello?" Her voice shook, barely a whisper. No reply, only the scratching. It was coming from the far end of the attic, where shadows pooled thickly, absorbing the dim light. Maggie's brother, David, had always been the one to tease her about ghosts and monsters. She never believed him. Now, standing here with the smell of something metallic in the air, she almost wished she had. With each step, the temperature dropped. Her breath clouded, swirling like a storm inside the narrow attic staircase. Then she saw it, the door, slightly ajar, and a figure crouched in the corner, face hidden. The figure moved, just slightly, but enough to make her heart leap. She called out again, but her voice caught in her throat. The figure tilted its head, and for a moment Maggie thought she saw David's familiar eyes glinting in the shadows. Then the lights flickered, and everything went black. When the lights returned, the attic appeared empty. Dust motes floated in the thin beams of sunlight that struggled through the grimy window. Maggie's breathing was ragged. She felt the warmth of tears on her cheeks. But something was wrong. The air carried a heavy, almost metallic scent. She turned to leave and froze. The red smear on the wall had multiplied, streaks crawling unnaturally like living veins. Her stomach churned. A whisper slithered from the corner. "Maggie," it hissed, deep and distorted, as if several voices spoke at once. She spun, but the corner remained dark and empty. Her sanity teetered. She considered running downstairs, but the staircase seemed impossibly far, the static stretching unnaturally. A sudden crash echoed from the kitchen. Her heart lurched, and she realized the turkey platter had vanished from the table. She ran, stumbling into the main room. Chairs had shifted. The empty chair across from her now faced the wall. She could feel eyes on her. She wasn't alone. Maggie's brother had disappeared years ago, but she swore she could hear the scrape of nails behind her, soft, steady, moving closer. She whispered his name. Nothing. Then, from the shadows, a hand appeared on the wall, pressing against the peeling wallpaper. It didn't move like a normal hand, more like it was emerging from the surface itself. Her reflection in the window startled her. She saw a pale, gaunt version of herself, smiling with blood streaked down her cheeks, sitting at the head of the table. It mouthed something she couldn't hear. And in that moment, Maggie realized she had never been alone.
Maggie ran through the hallways, but the farmhouse had changed. Doorways stretched impossibly high, walls bent at impossible angles. Her feet seemed to sink into the floorboards, slow and sticky, as if the house itself resisted her escape. The smell of cooked meat and rot merged in her nostrils. She turned the corner and saw the kitchen again. The turkey, once golden brown, now charred black, oozing a thick, tar-like liquid. The clock on the wall spun backward, second hand spinning wildly. A whisper became a chant, louder, insistent. "You shouldn't have come back." Maggie's mind fractured. She remembered childhood Thanksgivings with David, laughter, teasing, playful arguments. And then the night he vanished, the blood on the floor, the screams she had blocked from memory. Now the attic scratching echoed inside her skull. She covered her ears, screaming, but the sound grew, deafening, the voice inside the walls growing clearer. "He's waiting for you." A mirror shattered in front of her, shards floating midair. In them she glimpsed David's face, twisted and wrong. He was smiling, but the grin didn't reach his eyes. The eyes so familiar stared right through her. A force pulled her toward the living room. The empty chair spun slowly. She froze. On it sat a figure, clothed in shadows. Its head jerked toward her, snapping unnaturally. She felt bile rise in her throat. Something cold brushed her neck. Maggie screamed and bolted, but the hallway had disappeared. She was in the dining room again, the table laid out perfectly, food steaming, as if nothing had happened. And yet, the whisper persisted, now in her own voice. "Sit down, Maggie. It's your turn."
Maggie's legs refused to obey. Every step toward the chair felt heavier, as if invisible hands pressed her down. The chair was no longer empty. It was David, but not David. Something darker, more hollow. His eyes glimmered with a cold fire, and the corners of his mouth twitched like a twitching wound. She tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. The room warped around her. The walls pulsed slowly like the heartbeat of some living creature. The smell of decay thickened, blending with the rich aroma of turkey, the familiar and comforting now grotesque. He spoke, without moving lips. "You left me." His voice was fractured, layered with too many tones. Fear gnawed at Maggie's chest. She realized she could no longer tell if he was here or inside her mind. Her reflection in the polished silverware crawled, distorting. A version of herself sat at the table, smiling. Its eyes were David's, mocking her, pulling at her memories. Each Thanksgiving she'd forgotten was flickering in front of her like broken film reels. Laughter, blood, betrayal. Maggie's mind spun. Was this a dream, a memory, or something far worse? She remembered the night David disappeared, how she had screamed, how she had run, and how the house had seemed to swallow him whole. Now the house demanded payment. She was trapped in its memory, its hunger. The shadows pressed closer. The whispering turned into a chant, looping her name. The figure stood, slowly, its movements jerky, unnatural. Maggie tried to retreat, but the chair shifted, following her, gliding over the floor like it had its own will. And she understood, with icy certainty, there was no escape.
Maggie fell into the chair. She couldn't resist. The table seemed to close around her, the walls breathing, pressing. She watched as the figure, David, leaned forward. The air crackled with malice. The turkey before her quivered, tendrils of black smoke rising from its charred surface. She knew what she had to do: carve. Her hands gripped the knife, but it felt alive, writhing in her grasp. The room shifted violently. One moment she was in the farmhouse, the next the walls melted into endless darkness. Shadows consumed her feet, climbing higher, reaching. She tried to scream, but only a wet, hollow sound emerged. From the darkness, voices erupted, overlapping, chanting, "You are the meal. You are the memory. You are the debt." Maggie's mind fractured.
Each memory of David, each Thanksgiving she remembered, twisted into grotesque forms. Children's laughter turning to screams, pies crawling with insects, faces she loved twisting into masks of rage. The figure leaned closer, whispering, "We wait for every year, every meal, and now you are ours." Maggie's vision blurred. The table stretched infinitely. She could feel the knife sinking into her own hand, as if the house demanded her pain. Then silence. She opened her eyes. The farmhouse was still, untouched. The turkey lay golden, the table perfect. She was alone. But the empty chair across from her creaked. Slowly. Neighbors would later whisper about Maggie's Thanksgiving alone. The house looked ordinary from the outside, smoke curling from the chimney, a comforting smell of turkey in the air. But those who dared to glance at the window swore they saw her at the table, staring at an empty chair. Friends speculated endlessly. Had she imagined it all? Was it grief over her missing brother, or something darker? Some said the farmhouse had always been cursed, its walls remembering every act of fear and loss that had occurred inside. Others thought she had finally broken, her mind surrendering to guilt and memory. One neighbor swore she saw a shadow move in the attic, dragging something unseen across the floor. Another claimed she had heard whispers through the walls on Thanksgiving night, calling her name. Maggie herself would never speak of what she experienced. Even now, she refused to enter the dining room, avoiding eye contact with the empty chair. Yet, when she closed her eyes, she could see the shadows, hear the whispers, feel the pull of the house as if it remembered her. People debated what happened. Did David return? Was it a ghost? Or had Maggie become part of the house's memory, trapped at the table with a hunger she could not escape? Some nights, when the wind blows just right and the trees scratch against the windows, they say you can hear someone whispering a name, soft and broken. They say the farmhouse waits for her. And for every guest who dares to sit alone at Thanksgiving, the shadows grow hungrier. The story ended, or maybe it didn't. People still ask, still speculate, and every Thanksgiving, when the turkey is carved and the family sits down, they wonder, who is really at the table and who is waiting in the shadows?